Hello everyone, you are on the True Crime Documentary channel. Today we'll learn about a mysterious case that took 12 years before it was solved. And just 12 years later, the whole world learned the horrifying truth about how the beauty queen disappeared from her own home without a trace, without her belongings, her phone, or her car. Tara Faye Grinstead was born on the 14th of November 1974 in Hawkinsville, Georgia. She grew up in a loving and caring environment, had a lot of friends, maintained a warm relationship with her parents, and showed an interest in learning. After college, Tara earned her master's in education and landed a job she had long dreamed of. Tara worked as a history teacher at a secondary school, and as well as having an attractive appearance, she also had an ideal reputation. She won beauty contests and invested the money she won in education. Grinstead found it easy to find a common language with people. They loved her work, and the pupils loved her lessons. Life went on quietly and cautiously. None of the locals could have imagined that the town would soon be plunged into an atmosphere of fear and suspicion. Life would become like a real-life detective series, because anyone could be involved in the girl's disappearance. At 11 p.m. on 22nd October 2005, Tara Grinstead returned home. She parked her car under a shed outside her house and disappeared without a trace. Remarkably, the neighbors noticed that the girl did not turn on the light in the bedroom. It was her peculiar ritual, but they paid no attention. The next morning, Grinstead's mother was alarmed. Her daughter was ignoring her phone calls, which was not unusual. But when Tara didn't turn up for work, everyone realized that something terrible had happened, because such behavior is not like the responsible Tara. The police were called and staff went to her home. At 10 a.m., 2 days after her disappearance, police officer Billy Hancock arrived at her house. He found Tara's car in its usual place, the doors unlocked, but in such a small town, people were not worried at all about their cars being stolen. Then he noticed that there was an envelope on the dashboard with $100 in cash. It was strange how a responsible person like Tara could leave the money in such a conspicuous place. He knocked on the door, but no one opened it. Then he decided to look around the house. At first glance, everything looked perfectly normal. There was no sign of a struggle or forced entry. But in Tara's bedroom, the detectives found a bit of a mess, not at all typical of the woman. Her belongings were on the floor, including the clothes she had last been seen wearing. A mobile phone was on the charger on the bedside table. Everything suggested that the teacher had just come home and left the house for a while, but she was nowhere to be found. But it is unfair to say that the teacher disappeared without a trace. On the ground outside the house, the police found the first piece of evidence that led them to believe a crime had been committed. There was a latex glove lying around that could have been used to hide fingerprints. The detectives did not consider the possibility that the glove might have belonged to Tara. It was rarely used in the house. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation has now taken over the case. The main theory was kidnapping, but there was very little evidence. Apart from the glove, the detectives found Tara's broken necklace on the bedroom floor and the alarm clock was out of place. But none of this helped the detectives solve the mystery of her disappearance. Tara's house was cordoned off and locals and students did their best to help with the search. Meanwhile, the latex glove was given to experts. They were able to take a DNA sample from the unknown man, but no match was found in the FBI database. Then the investigators began to dig into Tara's personal life and past. It is often the case that the crime is committed by someone close to the victim. After investigating the men Tara had been involved with, the detectives were unable to identify a single suspect. Her longest relationship was with Marcus Harper, a former policeman and military officer. The couple broke up at Tara's instigation about a year before she disappeared because she wanted to start a family, and Marcus was not ready for that. They maintained a friendly relationship after the split, calling and texting each other. Detectives later uncovered an interesting detail. Marcus had arrived in town 3 weeks before Tara's disappearance, but had not told her. After hearing about his arrival from mutual acquaintances, the woman became very upset. She called him repeatedly, trying to find out why he had not informed her of his arrival. Soon, Tara's state of mind became hysterical, and her family became concerned, even wondering if Tara might do something foolish. But the girl soon came to her senses, and the police did not consider Marcus a suspect. They had been together for a long time, but their relationship had ended, and detectives could not find a motive for the crime. But an interesting twist soon awaited them. The police learned that Tara had been threatened by her former student. On 30th of March 2005, 7 months before the girl's disappearance, he arrived at her house and was extremely aggressive. When Tara refused to let him in, he started banging on the door, and neighbors had to call the police. It turned out that the young man had been in love with the teacher since high school. According to her friends, the former student was emotionally unstable, acting strangely and even scary. For a while, Tara tried to help him, but after the incident when the young man tried to break into the house, she was afraid that he might harm her. The police tracked down the young man. He worked in a neighboring town 150 kilometers away, but he gave the detectives an alibi for the night his former teacher disappeared. His involvement in the case could not be established. A business card of a policeman was also found in the woman's house, and it turned out that Tara had been seeing him for some time, but he was living in another city at the time of her disappearance. The policeman also provided an alibi. This effectively ended the list of suspects, and with no leads, the police decided to organize a search for the girl. 2 weeks after the disappearance, such a late decision seemed strange. After all, it was clear from the first minutes that Tara had not left the house of her own free will. Hundreds of volunteers took part in the search, combing the area around Ocilla. During the search, it was reported that a house and a car had burned down near Tara's home. The locals almost unanimously agreed that the incident had something to do with the woman's disappearance, or people were so shocked and frightened that they found any event suspicious. In the end, the search proved fruitless, and the police were faced with the grim reality that they simply had no leads, and the next few years brought the police no closer to solving the mystery. But in 2009, there was an event that brought Tara's disappearance back into the spotlight. A user posted an extremely creepy video claiming to be involved in the disappearance of 16 girls, including Tara Grinstead. The stranger added that he had hidden the bodies safely and would give clues to the burial site in new videos. The police found that all 16 names belonged to missing women. The FBI quickly tracked down the author of the video, who turned out to be 27-year-old Andrew Haley, who claimed he was only joking after his arrest. Police were unable to link Andrew to any of the 16 missing girls, but he could not avoid trial and was sentenced to 2 years hard labor and 13 years probation. The fleeting hope of solving this cold case faded, and the police were once again left without a single lead. In December 2010, Tara Grinstead was officially declared dead, as there was simply nothing to work with. As the years passed, the people of Ocilla remembered Tara's disappearance well, but less and less discussed it. Conversations about Tara remained behind closed doors. The subject was rarely brought up in everyday life. The town had changed forever. Fear and suspicion had permeated the locals for years. In 2016, for the first time in many years, something happened that made people talk openly about Tara again. Atlanta journalist Bain Lindsay has created his own podcast dedicated to mystery cases, and for the first episode, he took on the case of Tara Grinstead. He and his colleague came to Ocilla, where he met up with private investigator Maurice Godwin. Together, they started the case from scratch, literally, with no access to police records. At first, they could only communicate with Tara's friends and relatives. Lindsay's enthusiasm managed to rekindle interest in the case, and soon the people of Ocilla were talking about it again. Lindsay and Goodwin worked through all the possible leads, considering 3 possible suspects: Tara's ex-boyfriends and the student who had tried to break into her house. Along the way, they talked to anyone who might have useful information. They were so engrossed in the case that more than once they thought the solution was literally just a step away. One day, Lindsay received a phone call from an unknown person offering to search the grounds of Tara's house for remains. The police did, and at one point they found a bone. However, experts quickly determined that the bone belonged to an animal. Despite the excitement and renewed interest in the case, there were no major developments, but it was this amateur investigation that may have been the deciding factor in the long-awaited resolution. In early 2017, a woman called Brooke Sheridan went to the police. Her story shocked detectives who no longer believed the truth would ever come out. Brooke told detectives that her ex-boyfriend, Bo Dukes, had once admitted to her that he had helped his friend get rid of Tara Grinstead's body. After finding out, the girl repeatedly begged the man to confess, but he remained silent. After hearing Brooke's story, the police took their time. Who knows, maybe this woman just wanted fame and attention, especially when a successful podcast made everyone talk about the case again. The detectives decided to play it safe and asked Brooke to wear a wire and go to Dukes' house to extract a confession. It worked. The man did not deny his involvement, and the police had grounds to arrest him. To their surprise, Dukes immediately began cooperating with the investigation, putting all his cards on the table. Detectives would later say that he was simply tired of living with this burden on his soul. Late one night, he received a phone call from his friend and former classmate Ryan Duke, who asked him to borrow a truck and help him with something, then added, "I broke into Tara Grinstead's house to steal some money, but something went wrong and I killed her," according to Ryan's story. He went for a drive after a party with friends and then decided to rob someone's house to get some money. He chose Tara's house and was under the influence of illegal substances at the time. After opening the door with a credit card, he entered the house and started looking for money. Tara spotted him and a struggle ensued, with only Ryan surviving. When Dukes arrived at Tara's house in a lorry, they loaded the woman's body into it and drove her to the woods, where the two of them spent several days disposing of the crime. The story shocked the people of Ocilla, and Duke were never considered suspects. After all, they had no motive, and there were no clues linking them to the woman's disappearance. Despite his full confession, Dukes would not testify against himself in court and appeared before Tara's relatives, crying and begging forgiveness for what he had done. Dukes had spent a long time in the military, was a veteran, and had received many commendations, but the court handed down its verdict: 25 years in prison for helping to cover up the crime. As for Ryan Duke, his trial has dragged on to this day, aided in no small part by lawyers using various loopholes to delay the inevitable. There is no doubt that Ryan will go to prison, but when the court will make its final decision is unknown. Now that the truth about this high-profile case has been revealed, Tara Grinstead's friends and family have been relieved of the burden of the unknown. Her mother confessed that all these years she had secretly hoped for a miracle, that her daughter would return to her alive. Sadly, reality proved to be cruel, senseless, and without logic. But at least now the whole world knows exactly what happened in that little town of Ocilla back in 2005.